We'll be talking about Polkadot a lot because we got Karim Jedda here. What's your story? How did you end up at Parity? What brought you to crypto?
The whole Web3 ethos. I'm in control of my data, I'm in control of my keys. It addresses everything around platform risk. Unless something really bad happens, nobody can take them away from me without me knowing. There was a clear need to build this data infrastructure, so there were already users who wanted to get answers to questions they didn't have answers to before.
What are some of the particularly interesting things that you're working on, which you like?
So one project I was working on was called tapDOT. Sign one transaction and everything is done. So we're adding Solidity smart contract functionality to Polkadot. This will expand the realm of possibilities so much that I think some place to see visually what you can do is a start for it. Makes me quite happy to see that we're making progress and I can play a part in driving that progress.
All right. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the TEACHMEDEFI podcast. Today, we'll be talking about Polkadot a lot because we got Karim Jedda here, who is the Director of Product Engineering at Parity. Hey, mate.
Hello, Sohail. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We already started talking a bit off air, and I just learned you speak German as well, which was funny to learn. Are you guys all at Parity somewhat fluent in German, or is that?
I think some members of the team speak German because we have an office in Berlin, so obviously people speak German there quite a lot, and but most of the communication happens in English. So some of it happens in French too. So depending on you ask, so this kind of very multicultural. There's many languages, people from all over the world, since the company is mainly remote.
Gotcha. So what's parachain in French then?
Parachain.
Nice. All right, that was much more intuitive than I thought. What's your story? How did you end up at Parity in that position? What brought you to crypto?
Sure. So I joined Parity in 2022 as data engineering lead. What I was tasked to do at that time is build up all the data infrastructure for Parity to understand what is going on in Polkadot. And I was essentially contacted by an old friend of mine who is no longer at Parity right now. And he told me, hey, Karim, we're doing this cool thing and we'd love to have you here to build it. We used to work together at the Pro7 company, also in Germany, in Munich. And I thought, okay, let's give it a try. You know, I come from a different background. I didn't know anything about crypto or Web3 when I joined. So I worked in different industries like consulting to automotive. My last job was at Audi for 4.5 years, where I spent most of my time building data stuff for the autonomous driving fleet there. And then it was at the point where most of the, I would say, mission and tasks were phased out to go to CARIAD, the new Volkswagen subsidiary. And that was at the time where I decided, okay, it's time to have a look at something else. And crypto sounded very exciting.
All right, interesting. So you were much more corporate before. That must be an interesting transition. I think I kind of see myself in that as well, because I was working like in finance, mergers and acquisitions and all that, and now I'm full-time Web3. I actually joined an AI company that is based in Munich. Just wondering how what that transition was like for you. Was that something you kind of like wanted to do? Or did that not play any role? Was it more the subject matter that kind of brought you to crypto?
So what I liked is at the beginning was that there was a clear need to build this data infrastructure. So there were already users who wanted to get answers to questions they didn't have answers to before. So that was something that motivated me. The other thing is the whole Web3 ethos, right? I'm in control of my data, I'm in control of my keys, and all of that is something that I like very much, especially the angle, with that addresses everything around platform risk, right? Right now I have an email. If something happens, they can cut access to my email and I don't have anything else. My keys, unless something really bad happens, nobody can take them away from me without me knowing. So that's everything that I enjoyed about Web3 and that attracted me mainly to Polkadot because everything revolved around that, like more truth and less trust and these kind of ideas that I identify a lot with.
Do you miss working on autonomous driving? Because that also sounds like a, I mean, super interesting thing to work on. Or are
It
you?
was extremely cool. So I really
Yeah.
loved my time at Audi. We were testing a lot of different cars. We were doing the prototype Führerschein, they call it. It's like a license to drive the prototype car. So it was very fun. But as I said, some of the responsibility moved to another company, which I decided not to go to. So I decided to completely change and do something new. So that's why I thought, let's try crypto. Let's give it a go. And I'm not regretting my choice so far.
I like that idea. So making progress is important to you. So what progress are you making in your current role that's kind of
Sure.
keeping you on the edge of your seat at work?
Yes. So since I started at Parity, I was leading the data engineering team with Pavla, who's the data team lead now. And since then, I've become responsible of the whole product engineering department, which is made of the SRE, so Site Reliability Engineering team. They do DevOps, automation, security, everything to support the engineers building what they need to build. It's also made of the data team, which does collect the data and makes beautiful reports that you might also see on Twitter or X, as I learned we need to call it today.
Yeah.
And also the success team, which does a bit of pre-sales, a bit of post-sales and product marketing, and a few other functions that we're currently building up. So it's quite a big team right now and a lot of responsibility. And I feel like I'm part of, making things happen in Polkadot, making new things, driving new things, doing the experiments we talked about before we started the call. And that makes me quite happy to see that we're making progress and I can play a part in driving that progress.
Okay. What are some of the interesting things at the moment, or particularly interesting things that you're working on, which you like? Also, you mentioned data. Is that, for example, also this
Correct.
DotLake thing? Yeah.
Yes, we built DotLake from scratch, and
Nice.
actually we host public analytics that people can have a look like what's happening on each chain, what is the activity looking like, and all of that. You can find it at data.parity.io. The engine powering that is called DotLake, which we also open sourced part of it right now, so people can run it themselves for their own chain. If it's built by the Polkadot SDK, it works out of the box. So that is DotLake, yes. And that's also DotLake, the account. Pavel and the team are managing that behind the scenes and posting a few snippets and updates here and there. So I'm quite proud of that. Yeah.
Right, because I thought I saw an interesting post by the Kuzamarian, which was basically showing the transactions, I think, on chain on different L2s and parachains on Polkadot over the last 7 days, and I believe the data was largely sourced from DotLake, and it showed like an interesting image, so to say, of the landscape, because like a lot of the top tens were actually power chains on Polkadot.
Correct. Yeah. So 10 of the top 20 rollups right now are powered by Polkadot. And, when we collect the data, we try to give it to people who can speak about it, like the Kusamarian. And the data was sourced from Token Terminal for that specific report. So what we also do behind the scenes is set up partnerships and make sure people, not just us, have the data, but other people can replicate the data. And we ensure that there's more trust on the metrics and having correctness. Because if two people compute different metrics and they come to the same result, we're more confident that both are correct. So yeah, you're right. So quite a lot of activity, and it's amazing to see. And also
Right.
framed like that, it's good to put things in perspective across all of Web3. And I really like that post too. Yeah.
Right, because I believe there's been a lot of like wrong data reported on Polkadot on all these like other data sites, right? Because it's maybe, is it because of the very unique architecture that Polkadot has with the relay chain and the parachains, or yeah?
Precisely. And this is the active part that the data team is playing by communicating with these teams and playing, I would say, an education role. knowing how to communicate around Polkadot. Polkadot is not just the relay chain. It's like you would count website analytics just on a specific route and not on everything. So this is why we say, okay, the Polkadot ecosystem as a whole, it's made of these parts, these parachains or rollups, right? That all the transactions add up to Polkadot. So that's why framing it right is part of one of the big challenges that we have. Explaining it, communicating it, and addressing also skeptics' points who say, no, actually you shouldn't count that, or it's not a real transaction, this and that. This is especially made difficult because you cannot one-to-one compare transactions here and in another chain. So that's why it's also important that we set up a dialogue with other networks and other chains to exchange best practices, to understand how they're doing things. And we're slowly doing that as well. So it's not, just our interpretation, but we come up with something that generally advances all of Web3.
That's awesome. And you're also experimenting a lot, right? I've seen different posts of yours on X. So if anyone's listening, I recommend to follow Karim to see what he's tinkering with on chain. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Like, what are the different things you're doing there? I feel like there is a theme of making blockchain more accessible, improving the experience for developers to develop on Polkadot. But yeah, what are some of the things you'd highlight that you're working on there?
Okay, so I have a huge list. I don't know where to start, but I'll try to frame it a little bit in a good way. So what I'm trying to do on X is share a few snippets, experiments of things that I managed to make happen, but not from the angle of a blockchain developer, but from a general angle of any Web2 DevOps engineer or developer that would understand what I'm trying to make. So the idea is to show Polkadot is not a complicated thing that has arcane hidden knowledge, but that anyone can build on it in the same way they can build, for example, by pulling Docker containers and starting stuff. It's not that much different. So that's why I'm showcasing the results so people see, it's possible. How is it done? Usually some people reach out, they ask me, hey, can you share the code? Part of the code is open source, so people can try it out themselves. Part of the code is not open source yet because it's not in a state where people can do something with it. It's more like a demonstrator, I would say. And the idea there is to show that you can do things on Polkadot, show also that you can do some fun things on Polkadot. And most importantly, what I like to do is to find new ways to include Web3 processes into, I would say, Web2 way of thinking. The latest experiment I made was with OAuth 2, which is a way to authenticate and log into applications and all of that. And what I did simply is develop a tool that lets you log in with your Polkadot wallet into any other services that supports OAuth 2. Essentially, log in with Polkadot with one click. The idea there is that you would not need your email or you would not need any other thing to access a service that somebody else provides. Using a wallet has the added advantage that you have also a payment mechanism included. Right now, if you log into any application, you add your email, password, you do all that back and forth. And then you need to do the same thing with your credit card back and forth, validate the credit card, hope it doesn't get leaked and all of that. With the login with a crypto wallet, things change. You are in control, at least, of your way to access the platform. If somebody cuts your email, you lose access to everything to that, as I said roughly in the beginning. So that's kind of the .auth 2. On the more fun side of things, I try to build a skill tree. So maybe I can share my screen later so you can have a look to see what is everything that you can do right now in Polkadot. Because usually say, oh, there's nothing to do. I can just do balance transfers and all of that. But no, actually, there's a huge list of things that you can make on Polkadot today that are working out of the box. Maybe, depending who you ask, they will tell you it's complicated to do things and it's unclear how things work, but we're working to making that simple. And the first step, making things simple, is to list them out and make them visible. So that's roughly the ethos behind that. I have also other few small projects to showcase this and that of Polkadot that I find interesting
Yeah.
and that are cool. The last example that I want to mention is I also like to leverage Polkadot unique features, unique features to build things that might not be possible on other blockchains, right? One of them is a Polkadot AI builder. So a specificity of Polkadot is it has on-chain metadata. So you can call something on the chain that tells you what are all the functions and all their parameters that you can run on the chain. You can take these, put them in large language models, which understand how to interpret the connections between these things to automatically build a UI. Recently, Anthropic proposed a thing called MCP, so Model Context Protocol. It's a way to build a backend that provides exactly that. So in essence, Polkadot Rollups already have this built in, already have an MCP type thing built in. So I built a small translation layer that allows you to add this to your Claude UI and ask it, hey, I want to liquid stake my DOT on Bifrost, please generate the UI. It generates it, you just need to sign it. And these are things that I'm slowly trying to showcase, slowly try to show that they are possible to do and they work.
You mentioned the skill tree. Do you want to show that then?
Yes. So this is what I'm currently sketching out. Add everything that you can do in Polkadot, whether you are a developer or whether you are, I would say, a non-developer or somebody that wants to participate in the community, somebody or a transaction that you might do as a business, these sort of things. Mapping them all out and then allow people to, for example, click the things that they did and that tells them, for example, what they should try out next and all. So list all of this, make it open source, and let people participate in sharing what they think is fun to do on Polkadot. And, this list will only grow because right now we're working on the Plaza upgrade. So I think you had Joe already on the show
yes,
2-3 months ago telling you about this. So we're adding Solidity smart contract functionality to Polkadot. And this will expand the realm of possibilities so much that I think some place to see visually what you can do is a start for it. People who just join, who just start, playing around with Web3, they want to know what can I actually do with this and why is it useful for me. So that's a small example, prototype. I'll also post on Twitter, on X, and share all about it.
Gotcha. So did I understand this correctly? So you'll also share the skill tree and then people can sort of do these things and interact with this? Or
Correct. Yeah. So it will be an open source repository where people can submit some of these points. For example, hey, you forgot this and that, so I add it. And then on the user side, you see a UI with everything that is possible. And you can either click the things that you already did, or you want to learn how something works, which you click on it and it takes you to the right documentation. I'm secretly also using it to plug in the gaps that we have in the ecosystem, because for some of these things, there is no documentation. And this will make it immediately visible to at least, okay, this is what we need to address. This is what we need to review. And that is also part of another project that we're working on at Parity that we call Horizon, is to make sure that all the documentation, all the resources work perfectly well for our, I would say, Plaza upgrade, and make sure people can start building easier. Everything for the, I would say, improving the developer experience.
Right.
Yeah.
When is the upgrade coming?
So the plan on Q2, we will have some features on Kusama, and on Q3, it should be on Polkadot. So if you want to know more, there's a write-up on the forum by the TPM, who's in charge of the upgrade, to get more information. And generally, we post there also roadmap updates. You can ask questions, ask us maybe to add a few things to the roadmap. We're pretty open to feedback and actually love it, because the whole point of product engineering is knowing what to build in what order to get this or that effect. Right. So, yeah.
And that will introduce smart contract functionality, right? Which we
Solidity smart contracts, yes.
Solidity smart contracts. And so what will there be some sort of how will this be more powerful than like existing Solidity based chains? Is there some interesting things to highlight here for Plaza, or?
Yes, so that's the pitch, right? So that's our approach. We want to provide an interface where people can build things that they're familiar with, Solidity smart contracts, but under the hood, it will be powered by the Polka VM, not the EVM, which introduces more performance, better flexibility, and I would say will allow doing a few more things. But I'll keep that surprise for the launch where we have demos and examples. But that's the idea. Yes, it will be powered by Polka VM, which should be better than the EVM.
Okay, so better also in terms of, you mean, for example, scalability, like how much transactions can be done
Correct.
and things like that?
Absolutely.
Okay. You were also working on, there was something, a concept called Blinks, right? I think it started in Solana, and
Yes.
then I feel like you tinkered on Polkadot to do something similar. Can you just summarize what that was and what you did there, what came of it?
Sure. So maybe a little bit of context on that.
Yeah.
So one of our goals is to simplify as much as possible. Simplifying is taking a 10-step process and turning it into one. So one project that I was working on was called tapDOT, which you also mentioned in a previous show, if I remember that right,
That's true.
that I share on screen. The idea is to provide a white label backend, essentially, so that people can, for example, configure transactions so that people can just sign them and they execute the transaction. You do not have to go through all the hoops and steps. Sign one transaction and everything is done. That's the idea. That way we hide a lot of complexity and we do not leak any parachain or any IDs or any of that to the user. Ideally, they should just see a transaction, they sign it, and they're done. And this, I built it before knowing about Blinks and all of that.
Oh, cool.
And when I saw Blinks, I thought, okay, this is interesting because what they do is they're injecting functionality on top of Web2 interfaces to allow people to interact with the blockchain. Mm-hmm. It's an approach like the other. So I had a look how they did that. And I built an example too. That was, in essence, a web extension like the ones you see here that adds some functionality, some logic on top of Web2. So injecting some divs, some tags, some JavaScript to allow you to do that. Mm-hmm. So I also shared an example on that, and that was continued by an ecosystem team. I think they called Bagpipes, and they continued and delivered a solution that can do that. It's also on the forum, and happy to send it to you to link it if you'd like, because
for sure,
support the team. Yeah, so that was the idea. How this should be used roughly is you're a business and you want people to send you, for example, 10 DOT, right? Mm-hmm. How would you do it now? You need to send them the address, you need to tell them the amount, they need to go on their, all of that stuff, right? Mm. Stripe has a thing where you can have a one-click checkout. This would be the one-click checkout for Web3, roughly. That's the idea behind it. That way, leveraging these things, you would build things like digital, like selling digital services and doing all that management.
Does the website still need to add like wallet connect functionality?
Yes, correct. Right now, it's really bare bones. As I said, I try to do this demonstrator and not build too much of it in case a team wants to take it over, work on it, and participate in that. No problem. Right now, it has only Polkadot.js included, but no Wallet Connect. Wallet Connect, to include Wallet Connect is quite easy, and I have another example on that. So combining these two, you can have some pretty cool stuff as well.
So do you want to show us a bit more of the things? I see here you have a video. What is that?
Correct. So this is a small prototype that I built last weekend. So the idea behind this is you have a lot of tools right now that leverage a logging mechanism called OAuth 2, OpenAuth 2. How it works is that there's a mechanism that logs in users, and when they log in, they get a key to log into another service, roughly, to make it very simple. Right now, I replaced that logging mechanism that was usually with Google or GitHub or X with login with Polkadot. So how the login with Polkadot works, you get a random message that you sign with your wallet, like here at this step. I opened up the pop-up to sign a message. I sign it, and when I sign it successfully, I get the right key to access the service with my account. In this case, I'm logging into Matrix, so Element Chat, using my Polkadot account. This allows me to log into any service, essentially, without having to disclose my email, without having to disclose anything else. And I have the added benefit that this account I logged into can transact on chain. This means that this tool here can have some logic tied to the chain. For example, I have only access to groups if I own this or that token to do token gated group chats, for example, or have an on-chain reputation. So I can only post if I'm known in the ecosystem and did this and that. The possibilities are very endless, because here I show it with Matrix, but it can work with an email server. It can work with any application that is open source today that supports OAuth 2. You can plug it and exchange it. And this can really, really do a lot of cool things if used well. The solution that I made here is so open source, so you can try it out. Of course, I added the right disclaimer because, as you know, Sohail, I'm in Germany, so I need to do that.
Yep.
So I added use at your own risk. So if you download this and run these Docker commands, it should work. If it doesn't, tag me in the Twitter or in the X message, and I'll have a look at it. Okay. And that's the idea behind it. Like, not for now replacing Web 2 with Web 3, but putting a foot in the door into the systems that allow us to leverage the Web 3 advantages to make a better value proposition than a complete replacement, right? Because I think, technology is great, but maybe the people will switch if they see a benefit for them. Here, the pitch is, you don't have to use any password manager or anything like that. You sign in with your wallet. And when you sign in, you have all these added benefits that if you own specific tokens, you have access to that. The logic becomes much cleaner and simpler. So you replace some of the backend, some of the functionality. Instead of having it in Google or AWS in a server you manage, you have it on chain. That serves also for having transparent logic to your users. And also, blockchain doesn't know anything about this. So if you log into this application, apart the application provider, there's nothing on chain that tells you did this. So it's also private in some way. So not to rant too much about this. I really like it, and I think I'm going to integrate it into an emailing solution, so that when you log into a solution, you automatically have an email address. Email is already decentralized, so I think it's a natural next step for this.
Really cool. And does the website or the app need to integrate with this in order for anyone to be able to use this sort of login, or no?
Correct. Yes, there is a configuration. So for this case, it's going to be here, right? So when you set up the authentication provider, you need to provide certain parameters to integrate with your application, right? So there's a callback mechanism and all some technical details that I will spare you for the sake of time that make it work. That's the main point. So any application integrates it. The benefit is Web 2 applications integrate this out of the box, which is cool.
Gotcha. And what else are you doing? Because I feel like this is the most interesting thing we can do right now. Just like get a glimpse of your experiments on Polkadot.
Sure. So one example that we did is putting remarks on chain. So Polkadot has this functionality where you can submit a remark, a string of text on the blockchain to say that you did something. For example, you submit a remark that you decide for this and that on governance, right? We used it for submitting pixels on chain. So this image here is a 1 million pixel grid where people submit a transaction with a remark that says, I want this pixel to be this color. And here a colleague of mine submitted this picture through the command line, and the UI automatically updated. Now, you can do this permissionlessly. So nobody will moderate or can tell you not to put this in that pixel. So you understand why I didn't publish it yet, right? But I recorded an example of it working, and I shared this with a few people to try it out. And for example, how it works is you select a point, and then you choose the pixel, and you pay a certain amount in DOT to submit that pixel on chain. And this could be great for an interactive wall where people can vote on whatever they want on it. But it's kind of misusing the blockchain a little bit. It's not meant to have these sort of things because there's no dedicated way to store strings on the blockchain yet. This is just like making use of that. And anyone that gets that runs a full node or a node that supports the remarks or that keeps the remarks stored will be able to reconstruct that in the future. So that's one little example, I would say. But more fun is the Polkadot agent. I think that one you want to hear about, right?
Yeah. Tell me more about that. Is that about the connection you were doing with the LLM, with Claude?
It's something else, actually. The Polkadot agent is essentially code that you run. You connect it to ChatGPT or to DeepSeek or to whatever to talk to a bot that can do things on chain. So you don't do the actions on chain; it's the bot that does the actions. So, for example, here I made an example to convince a bot if you tell a joke that's funny enough, that will send you a few Western testnet tokens, right?
Okay.
And you can imagine configuring this to your heart's content. So you can ask, for example, the bot to send randomly tokens to someone with an address that starts with a random string and gamify it a little bit. And with this, you can have even bots interacting together because Polkadot is coordination technology after all. You see OpenGov, the Treasury, and all these initiatives to coordinate people. You could also coordinate bots. So you give each bot, 10 DOT or 10 Western tokens and ask them to do certain things. The bot that does it best gets the tokens and gets a reward function that is external to the machine learning approaches right now, which have an embedded, target functions in them. So that could be a cool thing to run a bunch of them and see what happens, right? Which bot at the end will have the most tokens and why did they have the most? So we can have a live stream of that and do fun things. And the idea would be to integrate a light client to provide a binary that anyone can run, and the bots will form their own network.
Can you explain that more?
So a light client is, I would say, a tool that allows you to interact with the blockchain without needing an RPC. So right now, RPC can filter your transactions, they can blacklist your transaction, all of that. With a light client, no. You're directly connected to a blockchain, and due to how the protocol works, it's permissionless, right? You can do whatever you want. These bots, if you start them with a light client, is essentially completely opaque to the blockchain that this is a bot or a person.
Oh, okay.
So they can do any transaction given they have enough funds and interact with the real world through submitting transactions on chain. And you can have as many as you want of them running with light clients, and you don't need to pay any RPC. You just need to pay enough tokens for them to be able to query language models or run your own models. So I know this is a bit convoluted, but I believe that I will make a demonstration that drives this point home very well. And the challenge I'm having is, how can we break through, I would say, the Polkadot perimeter and make this also a use case interesting enough for other developers to try it out? Because I think also this is a good USP of what Polkadot has to offer, the light client functionality tied to things like AI.
Okay, light clients tied to AI. That could be cool.
Language models, yes.
Are you using open source LLMs here? What are you using?
For this one, I used OpenAI. So I use essentially just a key. But if you put a VLLM or an OpenAI chat server in between, you can query whichever you want. So under my desk, I have open source LLMs running just for fun, just to let them, run in a loop and try things out.
Right.
It would work one-to-one. And how I see things going, whether it becomes smaller and more performant, this could be even a very cheap experiment to run.
I guess what you're saying is agents would independently do things on chain, right?
Correct. Yes. So, for example, let's say you have an OpenGov agent that scans all the proposals and that votes yes or no, depending how much it believes that this team will deliver. It can look up on chain what this address did before. It can look up the people. It can do a lot of different things to have an automated DAO, I would say, or automated participants in the DAO. That could be one thing. Another use case could be HFT, right? High frequency trade. You could set up a bot to also do these sort of things, actions for you, trade stuff. Because essentially then you don't need an RPC, you don't need anything. Just tell it, here's the data here's the actions that you can do. Get me the most tokens, right? But this is a bit more convoluted example. But there are a lot of things possible. It's just I need to try them out before I can confidently say that this is a good use case.
You mentioned the demonstration. When are you doing that?
Oh well, when I have a free weekend, when I'm not playing Sekiro or Elden Ring, because I love playing online. So I'll try things out, and as I said, I'll share whenever it's good enough or fun enough to share.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious. I'm sure you'll tweet about it or you post about it, so
Yes.
we won't miss it.
Yeah.
So you're doing all these experiments, right? And I would assume this is sort of like on top of all the product engineering work that you're doing,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So do you think would you like to see more experimentation on Polkadot?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the goals that I would like to set myself by doing this is attract talent, inspire people to tinker, try things out, participate in Polkadot, and give feedback. What do
Mm.
we need to improve? What do we need to change? What is not working? And this requires people actually, opening their command line, trying things out. And, a lot of things are put on the count of developer experience, but I don't know if you ever installed CUDA or the NVIDIA drivers and all of that. It's a nightmare. So developers are willing to go through difficult things if the reward is good enough. So I want to make it both easy and rewarding for people to join Polkadot and experiment and try things out. So that's my hope and wish, because developers essentially drive adoption. Developers build these use cases. And what I'm looking for is, sometimes great things come by trying out a lot of small things, seeing what works, and then doubling down on these small bets that you do. So that's why that's the kind of vibe I want to bring. And also that it's fun, that people interact with it, get some validation for some ideas, and make it a good place for developers to work in, or at least the best, hopefully, place to work.
Right. So do you actively look at other chains and like what they do for
Of
developer
course.
experience?
Yes. So I have crawlers and automation set up to understand, when this or that blockchains update the documentation, what do they update? Where do they rank on the SEO? What are the actions that they do? How many videos they post and all of that? And it's quite rudimentary, and I'm still trying to learn a little bit, because this is outside of my comfort zone. I'm an engineer. I'm not a marketer or anything like that. I just
Mm.
try to get some inspiration here and there, because there are uh, some good things everywhere to learn from, I would say.
Have you always been keen to build things and experiment? Like, did you
Yeah.
did you get into that stuff early on when you were a child or a teenager?
Yeah, absolutely. I love to tinker with stuff, because I have difficulties understanding something just by reading through a lot of things. I need to try things out, poke them, try to see how they work, try to see how they react. And that's how I learn. And, I wouldn't do the product engineering department in Parity justice if I don't know how to run a Polkadot node, for example. So that's why I do that. I learn to do it. I interact with the chain. I use the products that our developers within the ecosystem build to try out, to give feedback. That way, I can identify the low hanging fruits and the opportunities that are there, which others might miss because they may be focused just on one little slice of what Web3 offers. So that's why I try to test maximum amount of things, and then make use of what I identified. So in other terms, it's called, the explore and exploit. I don't know if you do multi-armed
Mm.
bandits and all of that. So I try to keep it 80-20, but most of the fun is in the explore side, I would say. So I love to tinker. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, if there's anyone listening that wants to tinker on Polkadot, where would you kind of point them?
So right now on the Polkadot forum, come share your ideas. Talk about things, ask questions. You can ping me anytime, tag me on Twitter, send me a DM. I'm very happy to answer those. Those are the main places. I would say also come to the Discord, where usually a lot of the discussions happens. I'm also there too. And I would say the main point is reach out to people you see on X or wherever, and they will point you to the right direction, 100%. So I never heard of any issues on that front. Also, if I can do a small plug,
Of course.
so we're hiring at Parity. So come to parity.io/careers if you have an idea, or if you think you're fit for the positions. We'd be happy to meet you and get to know you. So those would be the best places to have an impact. Obviously, if you already have an idea and want funding, the Polkadot Treasury will be happy to welcome you.
Awesome. Looks like there's a lot of open positions there, so
yes,
it could be good to check out.
Yes.
Anyone in your department, or is it?
It's split mainly between my department, between Joe's department and my department.
Okay.
So here and there, we work very closely together.
Gotcha. Well, awesome, Karim. I feel like we could talk about many more experiments and take up 2 to 3 hours, but perhaps this is a good starting point. Yeah, and in a few weeks or months, maybe we can sync up again and see what the agents are doing on chain, and
Absolutely.
if they've taken over or not. Sweet, man. Thank you for coming on the show. It was great.
Thank you again for having me, and I hope next time we can also do it in German. That would be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we can get, let's see, we can get the whole gang. We can get Bill on the show. He was trying to learn German.
Sounds good.
I don't know if he's made some progress. God, I think Kian even spoke some German. All right, we'll figure it out.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Karim.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.